Welcome back, my friends, to a very special edition of the Throttle Out Show that we like to call Story Time. Now, we've got a guest who's on the air with us. It's his first time in Story Time. Steve Lashinsky, what's up, my man?
Hey, what's up, guys?
So your initiation, and as well as Harley Joe over here, their initiation will be to tell us their first time during Monster Jam. Maybe not Harley. Harley has to go first time, but she does have a good story for us.
First time, I can't remember that.
Yeah. Harley, Steve, you got to give us your first time, I guess your first show with Monster Jam. So let's hear about it. Bring us in, baby.
Oh, gosh. It was a doozy, actually, of a show. Literally started working in 17 for the company. Monster Jam was brought on. First show, I went to Mexico City as a third guy.
Whoa.
Yeah, first show out, we went to Mexico City. It was a good time. Then after that, they're like, okay, you kind of know what you're doing. And then they're like, okay, we're going to pair you up with Haley Goldie and Scooby-Doo. So from I think it was August, September was Mexico City. So I was all excited until about November. Then one of the North Carolina guys ended up quitting up there. So then they start arranging the roster around, and all of a sudden, before I know it, mid-November, they're like, oh, we switched your trucks. You are now officially on Dragon with John Zimmer. And I was like,
oh. I think I know where this is going already.
I was like, okay. And they're like, your truck is coming from overseas. So I was like, okay. So as I'm working, I'm just helping around the shop there in Florida, just helping other guys. I get to see everybody else is prepping for first quarter prep on their truck, and I'm sitting here waiting for Dragon to show up from overseas, from China, I think it was. Shows up day after or before Thanksgiving, and okay, here's your truck. I'm like, cool. So I'm thinking I've got 2-3 weeks to get it prepped. Our first show was Toronto. I was like, all right, I got a month and a half to get ready. And they're like, oh, so your truck has to go to North Carolina because it's in the North Carolina trailer. So you got 2 days to go through your truck. I was like, what? I'm brand new, and I have no clue what I'm really doing. So I was like, I went through corners on it and changed oil. And they're like, you feel confident? And I'm like, I mean, I did what I know. And I put John Zimmer seat in there. So they sent it off to North Carolina. A week later, John Zimmer calls me. He's like, who put my seat in the truck? I'm like, I did. Well, it's not right. I'm going to fix it. I'm like, all right, cool. What else did you do to my truck? I'm like, I put a body on, went through corners. He's like, you didn't go through anything else. I'm like, no. All right. So he's like, all right, fine. So we show up for Toronto, and he's going through the truck, and he's like, you sure you went through this truck thoroughly? I'm like, I went through corners. That's all I can tell you. I'm really green. I have Big A as my third guy, and Bobby is our trailer lead. So we have Ryan Anderson and John Zimmer in our trailer with Big A as our third guy floating between them.
It was his first year too, I believe, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It was his first year too. So that was and there was a lot of other people's first year. I forgot who was else on our tour. There was
it was my first year.
It was your first year. That's right. I forgot. So sure enough, we go through practice. He's like, something's not right. I'm like, well, I'll check everything again. Went through it. First show out. He did pretty well. I think he finished top 5, top 3 in overall. He does his freestyle. He noses in, parks it, gets out. He's like, the shocks are not right. We have got a lot of work to do on shocks. I was like, all right, okay. The show's going on. The show is, everybody's rolling early and all that. So I was like, gosh, dang it. And Lindsay, BJ's wife was up there.
Yeah, yeah.
And she literally goes over to Zimmer. She's like, guess what? You're encoring. And he's like, what? He's like, you're going to encore. He's like, all right. I guess I'm ripping the front end of the housing out. So he walks down there. I'm like,
the show's over. The truck has competed. You're like, oh, the weight is off my shoulders. I don't have to do anything. It was a success.
it was a success. And all of a sudden he's like, all right, they like encore. I'm like, I'm brand new. This is my second show ever. I'm like, what's encore? They're like, oh, you're in for a treat, Steve. I'm like, BJ was telling me, he's like, oh, you're in for a treat. This is where they destroyed the truck. I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh yeah. Sure enough, third hit, jumps over. All of a sudden, the front housing rolls forward. I'm like,
Rolls forward?
Oh yeah, it ripped the housing out. The only thing was holding was the limit straps on the shocks. I was like,
wasn't the third member facing the opposite direction
yeah,
or
it was
something?
facing the totally opposite way.
So that was your truck. I remember seeing that image when we would walk into work every morning on the screen when they'd have announcements on making sure you go through your truck. Like there would be a picture of that housing twisted forward. And I'm just looking at that like, how did that happen? Like that is a feat on its own.
Oh yeah. And literally that's my very first show ever crew chiefing and ever working at. And I was like, and I just came from NASCAR side of things. I was like, oh my gosh. And we had a show Sunday, like at 1:00. I was like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, oh my gosh. I don't know what I'm going to do.
That was a long night. I mean, I was there with y'all.
Oh yeah.
XDP, the truck that I was working on, we didn't have a whole lot of damage. We didn't have hardly any damage, but we stayed up with Devin Jones and Barbarian working on his truck. We were right beside y'all. And one thing I thought was really cool, matter of fact, I've never seen this from another company driver before. Zimmer stayed up, I think, almost the entire night with y'all and worked on that truck. And I thought that was so badass that a company driver actually took his time, staying up and wrenched with y'all on that truck. And then Tim Mente jumped over there with y'all for a little while, worked on the truck with y'all. And like you said, you had Big A working with y'all. Yeah, what a crazy night. That was your first night. Wow.
Extremely first night. And it was, I laughed. I mean, BJ's just laughing like, oh, you're in trouble. I was like, gosh,
I remember he was pretty pissed too. I remember going to that week because that was my first Monster Jam weekend as well. I mean, I was with an independent, but that was my very first one. And I was told from somebody that BJ was kind of like the lead guy. Like, if you need anything, go to him. And, his truck was fine. There wasn't, I think he blew a third out in the rear. I think it was that Saturday night. And then they didn't realize it till after the show. They went to check lockers and they were like, oh crap, now we got to change for that. But anyways, he was up all night with everybody. I know he wanted to go home. His truck wasn't in that bad of shape, but he had to go help everybody. And then he realized his truck was broke, and then they all had to wrench on it real quick. Remember the Mays brothers jumped on it. Yeah, what a crazy night that was. Holy crap.
That was a rough night. And then Randy Brown blew a third out in freestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Ken Doug over there working on his truck. Like all 5 company trucks were pretty tore up. I think BJ's was the only one that was like,
but even then, like I said, he blew a third out of it, and he didn't even realize it because there was so much damage to the other trucks.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, man, we had a show at 1:00 the next day, so we all stayed up.
Mm-hmm.
Before the new rule came in, let's just say that this year, I think I worked till about 4:30 in the morning.
I think we stayed up a little past you, and I can't remember why in the blue hell that we did that, but we did. We got Devin's truck fixed, and then it was like I said, we didn't even have anything to do. We were just, we want to stay and help Devin, another independent, get his shit fixed. Then we went and did something else after that. Yeah, wow, that was your first Monster Jam.
And the worst part was when, okay, you roll a third out, it's not bad, but when we were trying to take the 4-link bolts out, they were rusted and seized because the overseas trip.
Oh, that's
rusted
true.
them and we had to torch them out. I was like,
that's when Mente jumped over and started helping y'all. I remember that. Yeah.
And they were like, okay, this guy's over his head. I mean, that's my very first time, and ever since then, it's not been as bad as that. But
well, thank you for a very good story.
Oh, yes, I appreciate it.
So you guys were on the same season, if I remember correctly. I have my dates correct. That Detroit show is when Randy Brown lawn darted his truck across the pods and had a yard sale at the end, didn't he?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have to fix that too?
Well, Lashinsky may have had a hand in that. I didn't have anything to do with that, and that was a one-night show anyways.
That was a one-night show, thankfully. But I always call that tour the Triple Threat Stadium Tour 3. Like we had like Toronto was 2-show weekend.
Yeah.
I think we went to another
San Antonio.
Yep. San Antonio was 2-show weekend.
In Houston.
Then Houston was a 2-show weekend, and then I think we had one show in Detroit. I think was the next show, and it was a one show. And I'm like,
that was a break.
wow,
Yeah.
that was a break. And then Randy does that, and I was like, and then I think we went to Anaheim right after that. A 2-show weekend. Like it was literally hence where Monster Jam is going nowadays.
But 3 shows.
3-show weekends. I was part of like the initial tour of like, okay, we can run two shows in a weekend. So everybody else was like, you guys working that hard on that tour? I'm like, oh yeah. So, and then like we had Ryan Anderson in our trailer, and you know how he drives.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that was a rough tour, but it was fun. I mean, so many memories on that tour.
Well,
it was a great time.
Thank you for a great story, my friend. Harley Joe, what do you got for us? What's your story you're going to tell us tonight?
Well, let's see. One that comes to mind is when we were working for Team Tomfoolery last year. We were loading up to go to Detroit for the weekend. It was my birthday weekend, so it was pretty exciting.
Turning 21.
Turning 21, the big 21, spending it in Detroit, out of all places.
Hey, I was looking forward to you guys coming up.
So it was the night before, right? The night before practice, if I remember right? No, the 2 nights before practice, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, whatever day it was. We were getting ready to load up trucks. Kraken, fired up, fine, got in the trailer. Jester, nope. Didn't want to go in the trailer. So we're like, okay, let's decide to change the motor out right before load up. This is probably, 5, 6 o'clock at night, realizing we got to change the motor out.
And we were actually, we had a week off, and we were going to actually leave at a decent time and get there without killing ourselves, mind you, from Orlando, Florida, all the way up to Detroit. So go ahead.
Yeah. And so we started the whole change the motor out process, probably like 6 or 7 maybe.
No, we could have, long story short, we ended up changing it at 9 p.m. And
it was that late?
Yeah, because we
man.
could have started changing it at 6, and then something happened, and then we couldn't do it till like 9 o'clock. We were going to leave at 9 o'clock and do like a little like half-fast, overnight type thing and get there at a reasonable time.
Get some rest, get there at a reasonable time. But no, so we stayed up all night long changing the motor, got maybe a few hours of sleep, got up early, headed the long haul towards Detroit, got to Detroit, maybe got out of the hauler and maybe not even there an hour. We have a show meeting, and they tell us the show's canceled. All the other shows are canceled. You could just go back home.
Oh, dang.
And so we're like, well, we're not going to drive all the way back to Orlando after we just got here. So we're like, well, whatever's open, let's go celebrate. So we went and celebrated, and then very next morning we went right back to Orlando. So
we went to the casino that night
we went
in
to the
Detroit.
casino.
There was a casino up there, and that's where we went. It was me,
Yeah, so-
her, and Cooper and T-Dog. We went from Paxton. we went to the casino.
I remember those guys had a display somewhere with
They
the
did.
Matt Steve truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
such horseshit. It was like
It was horrible.
we discovered the issue with the engine at like 2 or 3 o'clock. I got on the truck to go fire it up, and I was like, okay, I know I was doing something earlier. I had a ratchet in the hat. I was turning the motor. Did I leave it in there? I was like, that's what I did. I left it in there. I went back there. Air filter was on. I was like, there ain't nothing in it. I was like, what the hell is this? Went to go fire it back up, and it wouldn't do anything. Yeah, the motor just took a shit right before we were getting ready to go load out. And then, So Harley had, I didn't want Harley to work on trucks with us. I didn't want to chance her getting hurt. She was strictly supposed to be our social media rep for Team Tomfoolery.
Well, I helped out here and there because I wanted to.
And then it was me, her, and Nick working on the truck that night on Jester. We put a brand new bullet in before we took off, and she was literally in there like taking everything apart with us, and it was just the three of us. And the thing was, we were so wore out starting an engine swap at 9 o'clock. And like I said, we had a week off, but we were doing so much extra shit. We had got 2 new bodies prepped in that week time. And mind you, again, it's just me and Nick during that time. Like Harley was doing other stuff, but it's literally just me and Nick. So we're exhausted. Our week off didn't count as a week off. And then we did that motor swap, and we weren't done with that motor till like 3 or 4 in the morning. Because like I said, it was just the three of us in that shop. Matt and Laura, they had their hands full with other stuff. We didn't have another guy working with us. And we get to Detroit, and they cancel the damn show.
All that hard work for nothing.
Yeah. Austin, what do you got, man?
So we're talking, I guess kind of a common occurrence is just talking about late night. So shortly after this show, it was one of the Anaheims. I couldn't tell you which one. But we got done at the venue about 4 o'clock in the morning because we were up all night pressure washing all the trucks before they were like, all right, this is about as good as we could get it for now until tomorrow. Go to the hotel, get some rest, which mind you, we had to be back at 7. So
and hold on, where are you at?
We're in Anaheim, California. Okay. So, which thank God the hotel is literally just like not even a block away from the stadium. And me, Andrew Ford, and Jacob Woodard, I believe, was there to help out. We all get in the rental car, and we're like, we haven't eaten in like 5-6 hours. Like, we need to eat something. So, like, yeah, let's go to McDonald's. They're open 24/7. We're like, all right, whatever. So we pull over to this. We go to this McDonald's in a rental car that's sitting over about like maybe 2 blocks away. And we look in the parking lot and how they have the drive-through set up. They have this like little concrete kind of like bump stop or whatever, kind of like above where you're supposed to drive and everything. And to what I could see is this minivan basically heard that, oh, it's cash only, no card. They try to like leave the drive-through and basically they turtled their car over this little median thing. So me, Jacob Woodard, and Andrew Ford like are in the drive-through. We're like, well, do we wait for a tow truck to show up or do we get out and help? And we're like, fuck it. So we all get out of the rental car. We like all like manhandle this minivan, just pick it up and put it back over. And they're like, oh, thank you. That could be really bad, blah, blah. And Andrew Ford, without even missing a beat, it's like, honestly, if it was any other day, I wouldn't have done that. Because honestly, I'm just really hungry and you're blocking the drive-thru.
Oh, that's funny. I think that was our week. I think that was the weekend we were there. It was like the last weekend of Anaheim.
Yeah, it was that weekend. It was just a nonstop mud show.
Oh yeah.
And I remember too, because for those 2 or 3 weeks that we were with your tour, Lashinsky, like you kept having rear steer issues with Candace's truck.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like everybody tried troubleshooting and we couldn't figure it out. And the sad part is we figured it out in Seattle. It was a bad connection wire on the rear steer solenoid. So
dadgummit, man. Rear steer is one of those things, man. It's just nobody can get figured out. No matter how good you are at troubleshooting on monster trucks, rear steer is a gremlin that is just never ending.
Oh no, I hate electrical issues by far. That is the worst issue I think on trucks at all. If you got an electrical issue, it could be anywhere. So.
Mm-hmm. Just bring spare trucks. Do what they're doing now. Just bring 2 spare trucks.
Boy, you're right. You ain't joking. So my story for tonight is kind of goes with Austin's, just like your longest night. So I guess your worst night on the road, or your worst / favorite night on the road, whatever, would be Lashinsky. We had that all nighter. That broke me into Monster Jam. The very next year. First night, we pulled another all-nighter in San Antone. I was third guy between Todd LeDuc's truck and Becky McDonough's truck.
Oh, no.
And I don't remember Todd's truck being too bad. I know he had some damage to the truck, but Becky, that was the year she started going through housings, and we couldn't figure out what the deal was with that. Was it the shocks that weren't set up right? Was it just weak housings we were putting, just used housings, or what it was, whatever it was. So she had a housing that had shattered, and it was Big A's first time being a crew chief on the truck. Boy, he was overwhelmed. I mean, it was after the show, and he would admit this. I'm absolutely no way, crap talking Big A. It was just, we were all overwhelmed. We were all just like, hey, this is the first weekend out, and there is a lot of damage here.
Allow me to be the first to welcome you to Housing City.
Ice Dragon took a really bad crash in racing versus LeDuc. It was a really cool crash, but boy, he messed some stuff up in Ice Dragon. And I can't remember exactly what happened to the other trucks because we were caught up on the housing, but we didn't sleep that night. We just didn't. It was me, Big A, Dan Fiegel, Too Tall as well, Ken Doug, Yo-Ho. Boy, yeah, Lucas Oil was just messed up. It seemed like every show on that tour. And none of us slept. And I've got Snapchats on my phone. I'll play it for y'all of just, we didn't go to sleep that night. This is the best part of that night. It's my favorite night. Ken Doug, you totally make the story and all this, but it's like, I don't know, probably 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun's starting to come up, and Ken Doug was like, "Yeah, man," he's beside himself, right? And Doug's like, "I gotta get up there and I gotta clean the windshield on that thing because I know it ain't good." And we were like, "Ken Doug, there is no windshield in your truck, man." He's like, yeah, I know that.
God, I love Ken Doug. Ken Doug is such a good dude.
It came to be about, I don't know, 8, 9 o'clock. We're still working on trucks. And for some reason, I know y'all have experienced this before where you've pulled an all-nighter and something happens. You get a breath of fresh air. You get a cup of coffee in your something. You get your second wind in, right? And then you just start rolling. I mean, Fiegel did that. We both literally went to this show office. We got a cup of coffee, and we were like, man, I feel just fine. And then we got back to working, and then somebody bought us breakfast because none of the managers, nobody else took care of us that night. We were just like every man for himself. Somebody, I think it was Becky McDonough, went and stole one of the manager's credit card from him and went and bought us breakfast. Well, we ate breakfast, and we got super sleepy. And then we had a show to go and do later that evening. I mean, so I'm in the back working. It's like, you know what? If I was an actual crew chief sitting in that seat watching the show, I would have fell asleep during that show. I was lucky I was a crew guy in the back, or a third guy, working in the back. So,
I mean, those are the fun nights, though. You always remember the bad nights because they're
somehow
always the funnest.
Somehow you remember that night. Yeah, I think what I remember most about that housing swap that I thought was pretty badass was Big A had figured out, okay, so she broke off one corner of the housing. Well, the other corner was just fine. So like he unbolted the champagne and pulled that entire corner off with a loader. So when we put the housing back together, he just pushed it back on with a loader and bolted the champagne back up, and everything was fine. But I don't know. There were so many things that went wrong with that truck other than the housing breaking. It made for a long night for all of us.
So talking about that night, I remember like hearing stories about it on a separate tour. And I remember when we all kind of like got together, I can't remember if we were like at BJ and Lindsay's just having like a bonfire or something. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking about that weekend. I thought Ken Doug was going to break a beer bottle and run after me when I asked about it. Like, I felt terrible for even bringing it up. Like, he was so mad. I'm like, I'm sorry. I won't bring it up. I'm just a ride truck guy. I don't know these techniques.
And for me, it was like, boy, is this just going to be a tradition that the first 2-night show, or 2-show weekend for me going out is just going to be an all-nighter? Because, like I said, Lashitsky, that was your first night. I mean, and first show of the tour. Boy, 2 years in a row for me were all-nighters.
Oh, God. 2 show nights are always the roughest, but they're fun, though. I mean, you get to know the other person while you're working. I mean, you get to know their bad habits, and you get to know what they're tired, so you get to automatically start learning, oh, that's what they don't like, or that's going to offend them, so you don't say it anymore. You're like, okay, 2 show weekends are always the best ones to learn right off the bat. So
I think it goes without saying, I want to take the time to thank Monster Energy for being the official energy drink of A lot of these trucks wouldn't be around if it weren't for you guys. Thank you for the constant pallets that would appear in the trailers of energy drinks. We really mean it.
Amen.
Oh yeah.
So something that we've been hearing through the local rumor mill is a lot of people think that the Diesel brothers ain't coming back. And we think that's really interesting considering the huge impact they had on the industry, which is something I wanted to talk about just for the simple fact of whenever the Diesel brothers first came out in Monster Jam, I was pretty upset about it. And this is why. When their show first aired, I wasn't even working on monster trucks at the time, full time anyways, I wasn't. And I loved their show. Their first episode, they got an old Willys truck, put a 4-barrel Cummins in it, and they painted it in black bed liner. It was so awesome. And then I go on tour with XTP. I get to know David Ziers really well, the diesel monster truck guy, and who, by the way, has done not only so much for just diesel monster trucks, but for the diesel community in general. His history with diesel tractor pulling, I mean, that guy has records. It's unbelievable. So now all of a sudden the Diesel brothers come in and they're big time celebrities in Monster Jam. So I am super hardcore judging them just for the sole reason of, okay, you're going to kick out somebody like Ramirez. Well, let's see what you got. And they couldn't get their truck figured out. And we wanted to give them a hard time about that. And then they started finally getting to drive the truck. And then it's like they weren't that impressed. So I'm super judgmental of them. And Harley and I discussed, we were on tour with them last year. And I didn't even want to give them the time of day. Didn't care that they were on our tour. I was like, whatever we do, let's just wax their ass. And truth be told, Jester and Kraken both did that. And so we get to, gosh, I don't know. We're about 3/4 of the way through the tour. We're in San Diego. And they come in the driver's meeting, and they're fist bumping everybody. And I was like, well, that's actually pretty cool. And, they came over to me and Nick Pagliarulo, gave us a fist bump. I'm like, hey, what's up, everybody? And I got to, so in that show, I got to see, I guess, who they really are. And they are some pretty cool guys. They are some pretty down-to-earth guys. And I could totally see it being from them that they are guys with a good reputation in the truck world. And they come into Monster Jam and they want to make a good name for themselves. They think of themselves highly, and they don't want to come in as rookies, as chumps, and they don't want that reputation. And so I kind of see maybe where they're coming from. Maybe they did seem a bit standoffish at first, because in that San Diego show, they proved nothing to me, but other than that, they are some pretty down-to-earth guys. They came up to Matt Pagliarulo before the show, and they were talking about some funny stuff. I had a clipboard I was carrying around with me, and I drew like Ron Burgundy on it or something like that and put some stupid stuff for the San Diego show. And Diesel Dave thought it was pretty funny. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I walked off. And right before the show started, I walked up to his crew chief, which at the time was Howie Dalton in the Bro Camino truck. And I was talking to Howie, and Diesel Dave walked up. We were in the middle of talking about drivers that we had crewed for, and he was telling me about some guys that he had crewed for, Howie was. And I was like, I've been on a headset with Candace Jolly, with Becky McDonough, with Todd LeDuc. And he was like, LeDuc, you crewed for LeDuc? Diesel Dave asked that. And I was like, yeah. And then I walked off. It's like, I couldn't have been more of an asshole to him. And he was just trying to have a good conversation with us. And truth be told, towards the end of our tour, both those boys were picking it up. They were doing great in two-wheel, getting much better in racing, more consistent in freestyle. Truth be told, I wouldn't be surprised if they were, those guys that are finishing in the 3rd or 4th place in a season tour, a season stadium tour. They were getting the hang of it, and then COVID hit. I don't know. What do y'all got to say?
So I kind of am in the same regard as like my honest opinions first coming into like the Diesel brothers coming into Monster Jam, because for me, when it comes to celebrities, the people I always looked up to my entire life are the people I started working with. I really was never one of those people that really idolized movie stars or actors or anything like that, or people you see on TV, because they're just people that just put on a show. And I've always cared more about like monster trucks and motorsports, like those type of people that are doing something crazy, putting their, their life is kind of at risk, going at certain speeds or doing something crazy like that deserves more attention than someone who just puts on a TV show. So at first when they were coming on, like I just didn't really care for them. It's like, okay, cool, whatever, because Gas Monkey Garage had a truck, but Richard Rollins wasn't driving it. BJ was, which BJ was an awesome driver. Sucks that he got pushed out of the seat so early. But anyway, so these guys coming in, and my first time out with Monster Jam, their tour where they were first driving a full season with that truck. I think they had 3 different drivers. Like one weekend it was going to be Heavy D, Diesel Dave, and then Colt Stevens would jump in if they had something going on with Discovery to where they needed someone to fill in the seat for Brodozer. And Colt Stevens, down-to-earth guy, love the guy to death, super nice, super humble, love him 100%. The Diesel brothers, I kind of just immediately assumed they were just like these celebrities and always had their nose up in the air. And the reason why I say that is because the first show I ever got to see them was in Anaheim. And during the drivers' meeting, they had to cancel practice because of the rain. And Heavy D kind of stormed out of the drivers' meeting, kind of throwing almost this little tantrum. And for me, as a first opinion, it's like, oh, so this guy is kind of just all about himself. And he just kind of stormed off. Well, that trailer, which at the time was Brodozer and Mohawk Warrior, was parked right next to the ride truck for BKT. So I was getting out of the rain, went in their trailer. We were kind of talking with the crew chiefs for a little bit. And I, being the new guy, ran my mouth and said some things I probably shouldn't have said. And when I went to walk out of the trailer, there's Heavy D just looking at me. And I just kind of was like, oh, what's up, dude? Didn't apologize, nothing, just walked right past him. Like, I'm not gonna, it's like, I don't really care that you're like, you think so highly of yourself and you belittle everyone else. So where it's like, you're not worth my time of day. Well, that weekend they actually went out. Heavy D won Saturday. Diesel Dave won Sunday, which was the show that Diesel Dave did this weird double backflip, snap the housing in half. Well, me running my mouth that weekend, I guess Heavy D told someone, I want that ride truck kid to fix the truck. And I was cussing up a storm, working on that thing because of how badly it was. The body shop sent the wrong side panel, so I had to basically put a giant jigsaw puzzle together of the left side of Brodozer with a ton of yellow paint that really didn't match all that well, but as long as it looked good from 40 feet, that's all that mattered. Well, turns out after that whole weekend, I threw a piece of Brodozer like off to the side, and when we were cleaning up, I kind of threw some pieces in the trailer. Now, over time, really kind of like watching and seeing the Diesel brothers and what they do. They are actually really humble people. They actually do go out of their way to help out others. Just first impressions for me, seeing how they were, I really wasn't a fan, but now seeing how they're really branching out and really trying to be decent at the sport. I love that the El Camino's involved. I really don't care for the diesel drivetrain because literally all the other trucks are set up the exact same. Why should one be so different than the rest? It is what it is, but I do apologize if they by chance see this video for me running my mouth. If you do by chance see this, let me know if you ever want your tailgate back.
Thief.
Jeez.
Oops.
Well, I can definitely tell them when I left Florida, I got transferred to Paxton. My very first week in Paxton was actually the Diesel brothers practicing first weekend out. And they broke a lot of stuff, and I learned how to work on trucks instantly that first week because of them. So they made me better who I am as a crew chief now. And then seeing them develop into drivers who they are now is pretty impressive. From what I got to see them where they first started to where they're at now. Holy cows, this is a night and day difference. Both of them. I mean, it's amazing.
No, you're absolutely right. Like I said, they started to pick it up, and then COVID shut the whole tour down. I absolutely hate that for not just them, but all the other drivers involved that were heating up at the time, and then it all got shut down. So hopefully they'll come back. I don't know why they're not in it right now. I think they should be, but they should totally be back and doing what they do best, which is putting on a show for fans all across the globe, which is whether it's on the Discovery Channel or in a stadium filled with thousands of people. I truly believe that they will be back, and they'll be putting on badass shows for everybody. But that's all we got for this episode of the Throttle Out Show. We'll do a good old-fashioned outro. But thank you for tuning in to Storytime. Steve, thanks for joining us from Paxton.
Appreciate it.
My boy Spence, thank you for joining us from the Motor City up there in Detroit.
Absolutely.
And we're just going to send it out. We're going to tell y'all, remember, when in doubt, throttle out. Peace out, everybody.